Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much for coming to my masterclass on understanding the project culture clash and how you can navigate some of the challenges that you might have regarding project culture and how you can move it forward from the perspective of being able to go and use project culture to enhance your team performance. All right. So if you're ready, let's get started. Go and add a +1 into the chat. More than welcome to kind of see what we have in store today. And so when you go into a project, maybe it's mid-project, or maybe it's a project on fire, is this how you see your project team operating? Go and put a fire emoji into the chat if you've seen this before, because I know I certainly have when coming in to be able to go and rescue a lot of the projects that I've been brought in to get out of the dumpster fire and hopefully cool them off and actually have them deliver the value that they're intended. And let me tell you, it's definitely not easy. But when we go in as project leaders, do we sometimes see ourselves operating in this way? In maybe we're dictating, we're yelling, we're telling people what they should do because we have expectations of what they need to go and meet. Or maybe you're on the other side of just allowing things to happen as they are. Hopefully, the project team will be able to go and figure out as it is. Well, before we consider going too much further, I want to go and introduce myself. Hi, my name is Ben. I'm a project leadership coach. And what that means is helping project managers help them get to a space where they're confident, resilient, and strategic in how they go and deliver. So many project managers have the foundational knowledge, but then it becomes utilizing those power skills inside of them to actually go and deliver success. The next piece here is that I also continue working as a project management consultant, helping clients go and deliver their projects. And I'm also an international PM leadership speaker, where I speak at many different PM events across the world. I'm also a mentor at the Canadian Centre for Advanced Leadership, and I have my PMP, PMOCP, Certified Management Consulting, Professional Engineer, and Agile Scrum Master certifications and designations. But at heart, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a podcaster with my podcast called The Organized Chaos Cafe. And I'm also a bit of a comic book nerd. So I love the hero's journey, what they're able to go and bring inside of these stories. And I want to be able to help weave those areas from comic books to be able to bring out the powers of project managers. And I might joke around a little bit as I do dabble a bit inside of stand-up comedy. Now, today, I want to help you understand why crafting a project team culture is difficult. Why is it so hard? And help you look at different perspectives that can be provided to build that path forward. And through that, hopefully you can think differently and actually use that within your day-to-day work. So when we come into a project, what I typically see is that default behavior of what do I want and how do I want people to work, right? A lot of executives tend to go and do this. And it's not necessarily a fault of their own, but they use what has worked in the past for them. But what if we change it into a question of how do we best work together? Something for us to be able to contemplate, to be able to help move us forward. And here's the thing, culture is hard because as soon as we work with people, that's where it becomes really difficult. So how do we as project leaders navigate a lot of these challenges? I'm going to go through a little bit of my case study here around what I've been able to go and do with projects to help them be able to go and create a project team culture for performance. And that has led me where I've worked as a rescue project manager to bring a project from failure and trying our best to make it a bit of a success. So here was my mission impossible. My mission, if I chose to accept it, was to get products configured and delivered with quality in mind in the project time left over. Now, again, this was coming in mid-project. So I could just reject this and go on, hopefully living a longer life because I have less stress, or I can choose to accept it and go deep into the abyss and see perhaps where can we find that glimmer of hope to go and deliver success. Now, if you already don't know, I did choose to accept the mission. So this was a key strategic project where there was three phases. The first phase was Ontario and British Columbia, and the second phase was delivering these products out in the Maritimes, in the Atlantic provinces, and then through the Prairie provinces in Canada. Now you can see this reaches a whole lot of people are impacted here. And it's essentially 10 months to migrate all of these credit cards to a new joint venture supplier for more than 125 credit unions across Canada. Now, the situation was that there was a contract that was expiring and where those old credit cards would just not work anymore. They would all just be terminated. And so a joint venture supplier had said, well, we're going to step in and be able to go and help deliver it. And so that means we needed to go and make sure there was configure and distribution of these credit card products, legals, tournaments, and conditions all established with branding and marketing set up for each credit union, delivery of those cards, and ultimately transaction enablement. Because the worst thing that could happen is someone goes to try and use their credit card and they find they can't use it, right? That is the worst case situation. People have their bills on that. People are trying to make purchases, right? And not having that availability, ugh, that can have a huge impact on them. So when we look at what's risk, there's millions of members, credit union members, with possibility of no working credit cards. And this new joint venture investment, if this wasn't successful, there would be a long road of recovery to be able to become successful. And it would also be a large setback for the entire Canadian credit union system. So when we look at the three phases, where there's phase one, phase two, and phase three, I was stuck coming in right after phase one. And part of it is I needed to go and see how we help the team navigate Tuckman's Ladder. Perhaps you've heard of it before, but basically it's a framework for how teams are able to get to a performing perspective. And I needed to navigate them very quickly through storming, out to norming and performing as fast as possible. There's lots of different problems happening here where there's a lot of poor morale, a lot of bad sentiments from many different stakeholders. And so when looking what the first phase looked at, we see a lot of quality issues, a lot of unhappy customers because guess what? The worst did happen. They got their credit cards, they tried to use it, and some of them did not work. At the same time, we're a bit behind schedule with the pressure of the contractual dates of those previous credit cards being canceled, and they needed these new ones as soon as possible. Because this was a new venture, there was no real ready laid out processes. And so we had to create them on the fly. And because of all of these conditions, well, you can probably tell that the executives were a little unhappy as well. But if we look at the culture being established inside of the project delivery, there's a few things that I noticed. One is the organizational cultures, right? We had cultures from British Columbia out in the West Coast and Quebec, and then there's Alberta and the US. A lot of different cultures mingling together, trying to be able to go and perform, but each one of those had very individual cultures. With US just being able to grind and do the work, demanding to be able to understand how we're doing it and getting the structure on it. BC was helping to go and govern it from their perspective, while Quebec and Alberta, they had that joint venture there, but at the same time, their working cultures were very different. You could say Alberta has a cowboy culture, whereas Quebec has a very structured, process-driven data culture. And from a departmental perspective, there were a lot of other different areas involved inside of the project. We had people from legal, customer support, risk, marketing and branding, IT, PMO, you name it. A lot of things come into play. And so coming in, there's a lot of different spheres of cultures interacting and colliding with each other constantly. But I'd say the first thing you need to do when coming into a project and you're new is one, you have to know yourself. Are you self-aware? Do you know what kind of leader you are? Do you know what your default state is? It's important to know that because from there, you're going to be working through how are you going to be listening to people? How are you going to be listening to what they say? And if you're in a tough environment where the project is in a tough spot, it may reference something like a Les Miserables song where people are saying, do you hear the people sing? And if you ignore it, what's going to happen? And also know your level of adaptability. How good are you at adapting in different situations, in tough situations? And so for me, I've always been a bit of the chameleon because over my 15 years of project management and management consulting, I've had to jump into so many different industries as well as so many different projects where I've always had to understand things as I go along and learn very, very quickly and assess what's important, what's not important. How do I craft the solution, as well as understanding how do I adapt? Because working inside of a startup company or a software company is very different than a government organization or an energy organization. And so I've always had to act as that chameleon, trying to understand how am I going to fit and how am I going to get the team to perform. So hopefully you can go and understand yourself a little bit better because that is where your leadership will start. The second piece is prioritize your cultural elements. Choose what would best suit your performing culture. What does that look like? Now, this might be easier said than done because academically speaking, we can see all of these different areas where you have clear vision and goals, strong leadership and role clarity, trust and psychological safety, open and effective communication, collaboration and inclusion, accountability and ownership, adaptability and resilience, recognition and motivation, continuous learning and development, and work life balance and well being. Now, again, this is all academically speaking, but is that actually feasible? If you're in a tight pressure cooker situation, perhaps maybe work life balance and well being may need to be something that becomes a little bit more secondary and it becomes more important for open and effective communication. But in order to do that, you may need trust and psychological safety as well. So, depending on your situation, is understanding, yeah, there's a lot of different things going on here. We got 10 different elements. Which ones do you want to go and choose? And while you prioritize, is then listening to what people are saying. Remember, I talked about that a little bit earlier? Well, we talk about things where you may observe the project. It's over budget, it's behind schedule, there's continual scope creep, there's maybe poor team performance and vendor underperformance. But you know what? Those are all symptoms of something else going on. So slow down. When you're taking that listen, is understand what is the problem you're trying to solve. Are you solving the symptoms or are you solving the actual cause? Because even if you've solved the original budget problem, maybe 2 months later, you find yourself right back into it because you haven't been able to actually solve the source of where the over budget items are actually coming from. Is it maybe overwork? Is it because the work isn't being efficient? What is it that's going on with your team? So as you take that listen with your teams is understanding what are assumptions and opinions, things that may or may not be true, or maybe it's a perception perspective. While other ones is looking at, well, what are the facts? What do we know to be true? And when you're creating your culture, again, there's a lot of different elements involved. Remember where I showed you all the different elements of the different provinces and organizations involved inside of this joint venture. At the same time, there's a lot of departments involved. Well, it's the same thing. You have your organizations, you have your departmental, and people will also bring their own culture into it of how they're raised, things that are going on. And so this is where when we look at our culture, you want to look at this from a Venn diagram perspective of what are the things that are complementing your culture, the things that are the same. If we go back here, you can see this intersection here, right? What are the things that are going to work together to be able to enhance your project team culture? The next piece is what are the things that are competing? What are the things that are making it a little bit harder for your culture to be able to continue operating? And then there's a crafting side. What do you need to add to your culture to be more effective? And some project managers might be scared, well, how do I add them? Should I be adding them? When we look at it, you can think of it as what are the things that are going to enhance it? And it can be separate from the organization, from the departments. It is your culture to be able to create. And so I'd encourage you to have that courage to be able to craft and put things onto it that add value to your team performance. how they work, and what they can deliver. When we go through all of this, make sure you do it with integrity. When you're listening and you make those commitments, ensure that you follow up with action. If you don't follow it up with action, then all of those promises become broken and your trust becomes lost. And your job is to help your team develop the right mindset, the thoughts and action. Don't just focus on the action. You have to work all the way down from the mindset perspective. And so, from our project itself that I was referring to before, we had our final results where we had over 125 credit unions all switched over to the new portfolio. And believe me, there were some long nights, and we all understood what we needed to go and have for that because that was one of the areas where we couldn't really give up that time frame. But what we made up for it was being able to communicate and injecting one of my favorite values is fun into it so that people would be encouraged and engaged in how we're delivering and what we're doing. So we completed phase 2 and 3 with satisfied customers and minimal issues. From a business perspective, remember how I said that the organization was a startup and it didn't have a lot of the standard processes? Well, our project set up a lot of them, at least the base areas it can start from to be able to have continuous process improvement. And essentially, it set up the base for the organization to continue thriving and moving forward. And from a people perspective, they understood what it meant to be part of a project team culture of performance, to be able to work together, to be able to share in those same values to go and deliver. And a lot of those people that I worked with to go and deliver the project, well, I'm still connected with them, and sometimes we still reminisce about it. Now, some of the key areas that I want you to go and take away with it is that when we go into these areas for project culture, it can be tempting to just enforce what you want. So instead, understand yourself as a leader first, and then look and slow down, listen, prioritize what you want inside of your culture characteristics. Hopefully, from there, you're able to go and develop what your vision is of that culture after you've done a lot of the listening exercises, the assessments, to be able to understand what do you want that complements your culture right now. What are competing areas that may have conflict that you need to see how you either reduce the amount of conflict or avoid it, right? Think of it as how you would do risk management. And the last piece is what are you going to craft? What are you going to add to your culture to make it better? And again, it can be outside of all of those other elements of the organization, of the departments. There's a lot of things you actually have control of. So you can do it. It can be accomplished with a combination of tools and skills that best suit you and your situation. But here's the thing, right? Like all of the knowledge out there, say processes and all the things we get inside of the PM BOK or Scrum certifications and whatnot, a lot of it are frameworks and what I've found is that a lot of project managers need help to be able to understand how do I actually do it in my situation, in my context. And advice is one thing, right? And it might not even be good advice. But what I hope to be able to do is be able to help more project managers be able to understand greater solutions that they can go and execute to achieve the outcomes that they want. And that's why I started Project Apex. It's a project leadership coaching program helped to go and focus project leaders to develop their capability, their clarity, and confidence. Because believe it or not, this was done in a 2016 Gallup poll. Sure, it might sound old, but 1 in 10 naturally possess the talent to manage others effectively. Leadership capabilities, only 1 in 10. That's not a great statistic. And if anything, the other 9, well, we are just winging it. We're just trying to go and figure it out. And so when I've worked through and developed my reputation to be able to help projects get delivered as a rescue project manager, even though my background, I'd say, is very generalist, I don't have a specific subject matter expertise other than maybe project management, is when I've helped a lot of these projects get out of the fire, I think to myself, well, what are the things that I've been able to do that help me be successful in my projects? But more importantly is where was the support for the project manager before calling me in to be able to help them develop these solutions, to develop an approach to get them moving forward. And I found there wasn't a lot of support out there for project managers. A lot of it is for the project itself. You want more money? Sure, we can go and look at it. We, you need to go and add more people? We can consider that. But when it comes to ideation, solution, problem solving, where was that for the project managers? And so for me, I want to be able to help superpower more project managers to be confident and resilient, strategic project leaders. I know from a coaching perspective, there might be some myths that you've heard, and some of them are very different ends of the spectrum. When you hear executive coaching, it feels like, well, that's only for executives. And I'm here to go and tell you that anyone can be coached. And it's having the right mindset and being open to what solutions might lie ahead for you. The second piece is on the other side is coaching is mumbo jumbo and coaching might get a bad rap. But I'm here to go and tell you that coaching is about introspective solution development where I work with you to be able to ask the questions that help generate more creative solutions and actions that you can own and be accountable to deliver success. And in the end, my mission is to help more project managers move out from being alone, stuck, frustrated, ignored, overwhelmed, burned out, and lost so that you're confident, resilient, strategic, and thoughtful. So, how are we going to go and do this? Well, it's going and moving us from self awareness to education, where I hope to go and provide you with foundational leadership education and knowledge that you can hopefully then execute to go and use and reach outcomes that help move you forward, to help you excel. And this is divided into three different areas. The first is one-on-one goal development and coaching. Not everyone's goals are different. Everyone's leadership looks slightly different. So what does that look like for you? This is where I'm going to be working with you on that. And the second piece is a leadership intensive boot camp, looking at how are we going to give you the information that will basically go into your utility belt so that you know how to navigate some of these situations. Now, again, this is the knowledge piece, but the key piece here is the coaching. This is where we actually understand how are we going to apply it, not just theoretically, but in your job, in your career right now. So when we look at the goal development, again, it's understanding what your context is, what are the challenges you're running into. You can do your own leadership self-assessment and your goal, where we're going to map out what your journey looks like, and we can have additional support for that. It starts off with a 90-minute session with you. And for those that sign up as part of my pilot program, you get 2 additional one-on-one sessions with me to go and work through anything you want regarding your project leadership. The second piece is the leadership intensive bootcamp, looking at the foundational power skills around it. Now, right now, it's looking at about 6 hours, could even be more as I continue to go and develop it. But it covers a ton of different areas here around personal productivity, communication, mindset, conflict resolution, the whole gamut of things that I've always felt have helped project managers be able to go and lead and succeed more often than not. And the last part here is the biweekly group coaching, which will go on for biweekly for 3 months, where it's a hot seat coaching to be able to look at how are we generating our solutions? What are the questions that you might have in your day-to-day work? How do we navigate them, as well as accountability checks to make sure, one, are you doing the things that you have committed to? And so that's over 8 hours of coaching. The program itself, from our founders pricing perspective, we're going to start off with 2,400 USD. For the Canadian clients, please go and contact me to go and set this up. And for monthly investment, if you have cash flow that you want to go and be able to work with, it's going to be $690 for 4 months. If you need to set this up, please go and contact me. And here's a special. For the first 3 that are signing up using the coupon code EARLYBIRD200, you get $200 off your payments. And you can schedule a strategy call with me if you want to find out a little bit more about Project Apex. And if you just want to be able to look at the information, you can go ahead and download the PDF sheet here. Now, there's more to come. Coming up in November, I'm also having a masterclass on emotional damage to emotional intelligence and seeing how I can help you as a project leader be able to use this to your advantage while better understanding yourself. So, again, thank you for your time. My name is Ben. Go and connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to go and hear more from you. And if you have any questions about Project Apex, don't hesitate to go and just ask your questions. Go and send me a message. I'm more than happy to answer it. Until then, I'd love to go and talk to you soon. Thanks everyone for attending.